I play a lot of video games. Sometimes it's to have more examples for videos, sometimes it's to see if the hype around a title is real, and sometimes it's because they're kind of fun. A pretty regular comment I get is people asking me for recommendations, especially for indie games, because I include a lot of them in my footage. So I figured, let's do it. Let's talk about some indie games that you should play. I'm mostly going to focus on less popular indie titles, so stuff like Hollow Knight, Shovel Knight, Hades, and Celeste won't be on here. But you know, if you haven't played any of those, you probably should. Also, I'm not going to talk about games that I've already gone in depth about in previous videos so that I can keep things fresh, which largely just means I won't be talking about A Short Hike or Outer Wilds. But again, if you haven't tried them, you should play those as well because they're kind of the best. Anyway, enough preamble. Let's start with Crosscode. Crosscode should be talked about in the same breath as the most prestigious indie games out there. It takes ideas from classic SNES titles like Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, and even A Link to the Past, and iterates on them to make one of the most satisfying action RPGs I've ever played. While it hasn't gotten the widespread acclaim that it deserves, it is the kind of game where if you mention it to someone who has played it, they will go on and on about how great it is, which, you know, can be kind of annoying, but it is typically a sign that something is worth playing. The quick pitch is that the main character Leah has found herself inside of an MMORPG called Crossworlds, where players take control of physical avatars through the use of VR goggles. However, she has no memory whatsoever and is unable to speak. So as Leah, you explore Crossworlds doing quests that are a part of the MMO while also trying to unravel the mystery of what happened to her. It's a neat concept that uses its setting of being an MMO to tell a really fun single-player story, and it is one of the only games I've ever played that actually makes a silent protagonist interesting. Beyond that, it has a solid combat system that is easy enough to understand, but provides a lot of depth as you come across new powers and unlock stuff through the skill tree. Where the game is at its best, though, is in the dungeons, all of which gave me the same feeling that I get after beating the most impressive 2D Zelda dungeons. They're filled with puzzles that make you feel smart and talented for solving them, and intense fights that keep you on your toes, some of which also include puzzle elements getting players to do more than just mash buttons. It does an incredible job of tying all of its mechanics together to create an indie masterpiece. There is a lot to do, and the majority of it is worth doing, so for those looking for something you can really sink your teeth into, this is a must play. Next up is a game for people who like to feel emotions. It's called Before Your Eyes. I don't want to say too much about it because it is one of those the less you know the better kinds of games, but I will say that its story is immensely relatable and moving. It is a game I have thought about pretty much every day since playing it, which doesn't happen that often for me, especially with relatively short single-player experiences. Part of this comes from its well-written story, but the bigger reason stems from its primary mechanic, where if you blink in real life, time in the game will jump forward. It might be seconds, it might be years, but no matter what, every moment is fleeting, and this is how the story unfolds. In order to pull this off, it uses your webcam to track when you blink, which, by the way, as a dude who somewhat famously doesn't show his face on the internet, I get being a little hesitant to play a game that needs to use your camera. But for what it's worth, nothing is recorded or stored. It just tracks your blinks. And while you can play it with a mouse, I think it is very worth it to control it with your actual blinks. I have never felt as strong of a connection between how a game controls and the themes it presents. Every scene, I found myself desperately trying to stay in the moment, but having my body betray me with a blink, and then being somewhere completely new, wondering what I missed out on, but also trying to focus on the new moment so that I didn't miss anything there. It is a beautiful game with a unique control scheme that leads to a truly immersive experience because you are the controller, and your natural human reactions will influence how the game plays out. I really wish I could play it again for the first time, so for those of you lucky enough to not have played it yet, do yourself a favor and buy it. While we're on games that feature time manipulation, let's talk about the Sexy Brutale. Set in a casino mansion with the same name, the Sexy Brutale drops the player character in a time loop where they must relive the same masquerade party over and over until they're able to save every guest. Each loop gives the player a chance to learn new information that can be used to solve various obstacles and further explore the gorgeous and complex mansion. Along with being stuck in a time loop, the other major element players have to worry about is that they have to avoid being seen by any of the other characters cars because reasons. This leads to it being one big puzzle that has you tracking the movements of the guests and various happenings around the casino in order to move forward undetected. It is a cool concept with tons of style that also manages to tell an engaging story. For the most part, the puzzles struck that solid balance of being complicated enough to get me thinking, but never so obscure that I felt discouraged to keep going. If you're a fan of point-and-click adventures, this shares a lot of the same DNA, so it almost certainly is for you. Wildermyth is a character-driven, randomly generated tactical role-playing game, God, I hate describing video games, that has you live out the life of an adventuring party. At the start, you create the core group of soon-to-be heroes, and then travel the lands in search of adventure and glory. You have the option of choosing a pre-made campaign that has some sort of overarching threat and various set pieces specifically designed for it, or you can do an entirely procedurally generated one, creating a story unique to you. Regardless of which you choose, both will have random events occur to your characters that you'll have to navigate through. And depending on your choices, this will have lasting effects on them, both positive and negative. The game is largely split into two phases, those being exploring and combat. Exploring has you on the overworld map where you'll scout new areas, restore cities, build defenses against coming hordes, and complete personal quests that may come up for your heroes. Combat has you resolve various issues that come from overworld travel. It uses a grid-based system that has a fair bit of depth to it, and my favorite part of it is that characters can interact with objects and structures in the environment. There's even a whole class built around manipulating things like boulders and torches to attack or protect the party from enemies. It is pretty amazing the types of stories that Wildermyth is able to weave together through its procedural generation. I've played through a few campaigns and each time felt incredibly connected to my heroes, which I didn't expect to happen when I was first pitched the game. It's really well done. And especially if you like Fire Emblem or Darkest Dungeon or games like either of those, you should give Wildermyth a shot. If you have watched a lot of my videos, you've probably seen footage of this next one, but I've never had the chance to talk about it properly. This is Yoku's Island Express. I am fascinated by the way some titles experiment with combining genres, and Yoku's Island Express pulls off one of the unlikeliest combinations I could ever think of, a pinball Metroidvania. And I get it, to a lot of you that probably sounds terrible, but I promise you it isn't. The gameplay centers around the main character Yoku, who is traveling around an island as the new postmaster, delivering packages and solving problems for the people that live there. Traversal is done largely through interconnected pinball screens, and as Yoku gains more abilities, you can access parts of the island that were previously unreachable. The best thing I can say about Yoku's Island Express is that I don't even like pinball, and this is still one of my favorite games of the past 10 years. There's a lot of charm to its writing and visuals, and its structure made the pinball elements far more interesting to me, as I had something to work towards other than just breaking a high score, and there weren't costly fail states. It delivers the spectacle of the greatest pinball machines out there without any of the frustration. Yoku is one of those games that you can't help but smile while playing, which I have to imagine is good for your brain. And the way it melds two very different genres together is worth checking out for the ingenuity alone. Yoku's Island Express is a fun and intriguing game that also manages to be accessible for players of all skill levels. It's a good time. Next up is Ape Out. True to its name, Ape Out is about an ape trying to get out. It is filled with bombastic action from a top-down perspective where you run through tight corridors, grabbing guards and tossing them unceremoniously against walls and each other. It's fast, it's tense, and it's a hard game to put down. Maybe the biggest thing that drew me in is its adaptive soundtrack that responds to the ape's actions. Every attack on an enemy is met with a cymbal crash, and as you cause more and more havoc, the drums beat faster and louder, creating a sense of importance to every little thing you do. The way you tackle any given level feels like an act of expression. Also, it's challenging, but not frustratingly so. If you like Hotline Miami, Ape Out hits a lot of the same notes in terms of gameplay, but is obviously more focused on the melee side of things. All in all, it is a simple concept with a killer aesthetic and crunchy gameplay that is just really fun to play. And I won't spoil it, but it has one of my favorite endings to any game ever, so I would argue that it is worth checking it out for that alone. Moving along, Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight is the perfect game to play while you continue to wait for any scrap of information to come out about Silksong. It's a Metroidvania with challenging combat and intriguing platforming set in a cursed kingdom that you must traverse through and attempt to cleanse. There's a bunch of interesting boss fights, obscure lore to try to make sense of, charms that provide passive power-ups to support your preferred playstyle, and a killer soundtrack that almost certainly doesn't get the love it deserves. It also has a lot of cats. if that matters to you. While you shouldn't go in expecting it to be just like Hollow Knight, as both the combat and platforming feel a fair bit different, it does share a lot of similar traits. So I think fans of Hollow Knight will find a lot to love about Momodora. I've talked in the past about how I don't 100% most games I play because I end up getting annoyed with having to do a lot of shit I don't care about, but Momodora is one of the few titles that I not only 100%ed, but that I also still wanted to play after doing so, which I think says a fair bit. Yeah, just play it. Thank you. Lastly, we have Return of the Obra Dinn. At least in my circles, this is a somewhat popular game, but after looking up some of its sales data, I realized not nearly enough people have played it. Return of the Obra Dinn takes what sounds like one of the lamest jobs ever, an insurance investigator, and uses it as a base to have the player solve what is essentially one massive murder mystery. By using a watch that allows you to see a snapshot of the last moment of a character's life, you must connect various bits of information to identify each person on the ship and their ultimate fate. It causes you to feel really stupid for a while, but then you start connecting the dots and feel like the smartest person to have ever lived. And I think everyone can benefit from feeling that way once in a while. This is one of those games that I really hope other developers will take note of and try to iterate on the ideas it set forth to create something even better. For now though, it is a one-of-a-kind experience that you'll wish you could play again for the first time, so do it! Okay, that's it. I think all of these games are really fun to play, but beyond that, they include a ton of creative design that is worth seeing. Games like these have helped inform many of my opinions on what goes into good game design, so I think there's plenty of value in playing these just to have a wider understanding of the subject. So if any of these were new to you, go enjoy some games and see what you've been missing. And for those of you especially interested in the puzzle game recommendations I gave out, let me tell you about this video's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is a problem-solving website that provides interactive puzzles and interesting courses to hone your understanding of topics, primarily relating to math and science. It has so many topics to check out, ranging from logic to computer science fundamentals to understanding infinity. It's great for people trying to learn something for the first time, and also great for those who want a refresher about stuff that they were taught in high school but have long since forgotten. The courses are actually fun, and as someone who likes to learn new things, it has been a pleasure to explore what the site has to offer. My favorite thing about Brilliant is it has a daily calendar that shows off a new concept and then provides a problem for you to solve relating to that topic. It's a great way to learn new stuff without taking up too much of your time, and it gives a nice little challenge to work through. So to get some of those sweet dopamine hits that come from solving a good puzzle while also learning about tons of valuable topics, go to brilliant.org/Rasputin and sign up for free. Also, the first 200 people that go to that link, which by the way is in the description, will get 20% off the annual premium subscription, which is what I've been using. It's a really cool service that honestly everyone could benefit from, so go check it out. Anyway, thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. For all of you still here, thank you so much for watching. This channel would not be possible without viewers like you and viewers like my patrons who give generously, and I appreciate y'all so much. Also, I'd like to give a special shout out to Elfinrez for being an honorary Bag Butin. I appreciate you. Again, thank you, and I hope you have a great day and or night, and I'll see you in the next one.